What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Alpha Warfare podcast. This is episode number 2, where I will be answering my followers' questions. I did drop a question box on my Instagram story probably like 5 days ago or so, and I got so many questions. I just chose 10 that I found interesting, relevant, and some of the best ones that I saw there. But I will be doing this more often. So when I drop these questions on my story, these question box on my story, drop your questions. You might get chosen. I don't pick and choose. I just look at the questions. I like this one. I like that one. Oh, this one seems relevant or whatnot. So that's the way I go about it. But yeah, welcome to the second episode. The first one did really well. Good feedback. The clips did well on social media. The podcast itself, I got some great reviews. It was the first one. I had a special guest, one of my good friends. Look, very happy. It's a good start. Slowly, we're going to build this podcast thing up too, as we've been doing with the Instagram, TikTok, and the YouTube Shorts. And of course, it's impossible to grow these things without you guys, so I appreciate you more than you know. So let's get into this podcast. I will be answering 10 questions, and we're going to keep it short and sweet. And I'm planning on more podcasts in the future. I have some guests coming on too, trying to land some higher profile people as well. So stay tuned for that. So let's jump right into this. Let's see here, the first question. So, and sorry if I mispronounce your name or your username on Instagram, no disrespect. Some of these are pretty tough. But so, Jurek Luka asks, should Alexander Volkanovski fight in January? That's a great question. That's a question I've been thinking about lately a lot, because this is where my mind goes. You had Kamaru Usman, get knocked out by Leon Edwards, and he came back relatively quickly, and it did not work in his favor. It seemed like he fought really reserved the second time around, or should I say the third time around, because that was actually their third fight. For those who don't know, they fought for the first time a long time ago, where Usman won. So for their third fight after the knockout, Usman came in and fought very reserved. He wasn't himself, at least it didn't seem like to me. I think he might have been a little scared, a little hesitant. So, when you look at that example, you might think maybe Volkanovski might have that same situation going on where, he just got a head kick in, he got knocked out, he's coming in to fight an up-and-comer, undefeated Ilia Topuria, and we know Topuria can knock out people as well. So it's like, is he going to fight reserved? Is he going to be ready physically, mentally, emotionally? There's a lot of factors. But then you have examples like Alex Pereira getting knocked out by Israel Adesanya and then coming in to fight at 205 against Jan Blachowicz and edging out a victory there. So, it really depends. I think it's more of a mental game. Of course, I don't know how it is physically. I don't know how it feels physically to get knocked out. I don't know what implications it has. So I can't really speak on that end. But from what it seems to me, it sounds very mental. So I think if Volk can come in and kind of forget that happened and fight as he usually does, with his confidence, with his skills, with no fear, I think it could be a good idea to fight in January, as long as he's okay mentally. So that's where I stand right now. But I've been thinking about this a lot. I hope he's fine, and I hope he comes in and we get a prime looking Volk to a prime Topuria who's on the come up right now. So great question. Let's see the next one. So Khamzat, sorry if I said that wrong, asks, do you think if Paddy will win against Tony, will Tony retire? So if Paddy beats Tony, will Tony retire? Look, Tony's on a 6-fight losing streak. A lot of people say he should have retired already, maybe after the 4th or the 5th one. But he's still at it. Do I think he should retire? I think he should do what he thinks is best for himself. And also, like, from a health standpoint, whatever doctors advise him to do. Because, keep getting knocked out and hit and hurt, especially at his age, may not be good for the long term to preserve his health. So, I think that's something he should explore. Personally, I'm more of the type of person to say, do as makes you happy. Like, you want to continue fighting, go ahead. Do I think it's the best idea? No. Even if he does beat Paddy, it's tough. Maybe one more fight and see how that goes. But it's hard to say. I care more about his health and fighter's health. And at his age and his stage of his career, maybe it is a good idea. But ultimately, everyone rules their own life and they make the choices that make them happy. So, whatever he wants, he'll do. And side note, he's been training with David Goggins, which is huge. This guy is going to be pushing his limits to a whole other level. And at his age, that's what he might need if he actually wants to continue and try to get another victory. Because, Paddy's going to come in. He has a lot of hype behind his name. So beating a guy like Paddy is a big deal for Tony's career right now if he wants to continue. And having David Goggins on his side, helping him grow and become a better version of himself is freaking huge. And maybe good luck to Paddy, because having Goggins in the corner there, not in the actual corner of the fight, but having him in your corner training, that could be a big deal. So great question. Next, let's see here. Where are we at? So _IBAD_SJD asks, can Islam Makhachev at the end of his career reach the GOAT level like Khabib, GSP, and John Jones? Great question. He definitely has the potential to do so. He's on an amazing run. He's a champion. He just became pound for pound #1, surpassing John Jones. I still think he has a lot of work to be considered in that GOAT debate, but I think he has a very good probability and possibility of getting there. I think he needs to defend his belt at lightweight a couple more times for him to be considered. Maybe with high-profile names like Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira once again, if he can beat him once again, and whoever's on the come up as well. So that'd be very interesting to see. I think he can do it. It's hard for me to pick and choose a guy that could beat him right now at lightweight. So I think that's very accomplishable for him. What interests me a lot too is seeing him maybe move on from lightweight at some point and going up to welterweight and fight some competition there. There's some great names like obviously Leon Edwards, Colby Covington, Shafkat Rakhmonov, Bilal Muhammad, Gilbert Burns. There's some great fighters. I think that would give him a challenge. I think that division is more challenging for him, not only because it's bigger. I just think the competition is more well-rounded there. So, a great question. I think he can do it. Only time will tell, but I would not be surprised. I'll tell you that much. So, let's move on to the next question. Imad_DZ_HH27 asks, do you see anyone in lightweight or welterweight that can beat Islam now? At lightweight, no. Currently, no. I think you need a high-profile wrestler to come in that can give him a challenge. Of course, anything could happen, right? Like Gaethje could come in and fight him and just land that one punch, one kick knockout. It's a possibility. But being objective here, I don't see anybody beating him at lightweight right now. I got to see a bit more from some other fighters. I think one person to mention, or two people to mention that I think can give him a hard time, not necessarily beat him, but can give him a hard time is Arman Tsarukyan, because he did so the first time they fought, which was Arman's debut, and I think he took the fight in short notice, maybe a couple weeks notice. Of course, Islam did dominate, but Arman had his moments, coming in his debut, having moments of takedowns and controls over Islam. He could be a problem. Also, I want to mention Grant Dawson. I know he had that recent unfortunate situation with Bobby Green getting knocked out in the beginning of the fight, but how he dominated Damir Ismagulov with the wrestling and the grappling, shows a lot of promise. I think he can compete. Not saying he can beat Islam, but he can compete with Islam. Possibly. I need to see a bit more from him, but I wouldn't be surprised. He looked fantastic. He looked great, well-conditioned as well. And in welterweight, I don't know, man. I've been thinking of Shafkat lately. I would love to see Islam fight Shafkat Rakhmonov. I think that's an interesting fight that can pose a lot of threats to Islam because Shafkat is just super well-rounded. People say Colby. I don't know. I mean, I think the Dagestani style of wrestling is more dominant than the American style. So, it's hard for me to say. Bilal is overall really well-rounded, but I don't know if that fight would happen because Bilal does train with that team with Habib and Islam. I've seen some clips, so I think they're pretty close there. So I don't know if that would happen, but maybe a Shafkat situation, maybe a Leon situation. Who knows? Leon is a great striker. You know, I think if Islam takes him down, he'll do his damage, he'll do his thing. But if Leon could keep that fight standing, which is very hard to do, maybe he'd have a chance. So great question. Let's move on to the next one here. At the Muslim King asks, will Khamzat Chimaev ever become triple champion? That's the question. That's the one. Look, it's such a hard task to do, right? Think about it. To beat 3 champions in 3 different divisions, like already beating 1 champion is hard. Beating 2 is hard. Becoming double champ is extremely hard. Not many people have done it. What is it, like 5 people maybe have done it? I know John Jones did it. I know GSP did it. Connor did it. There's for sure others that have done it. Many that have attempted didn't work out. So it's very hard to just become double champ. Not many people make it. It's the 1% of the 1%. Now to become triple champ, even more so difficult. I'd like to say Khamzat has the capability to do it because of his build. We know he can make 170. We know he can make 185. He had to actually cut a little bit to make 185. So making 205, is easy for him. He probably walks around that weight if I had to guess. He has the style. Like I think it depends the champion too, right? Like I think he could beat Leon Edwards. I think he could beat Colby Covington. I think at middleweight he can beat Sean Strickland. He can beat Israel Adesanya. I think his grappling is levels above everybody else. At 205, today we have Yuri versus Pereira, which a lot of people think Pereira is going to win. I could see Khamzat beating him probably easier than any other champion because of his ground game. It's not nowhere near as good as Khamzat's, and people always say, Pereira would knock him out or Pereira would kill him or whatever. He's so much bigger. Dude, like Izzy took him down. He had 6 minutes of ground control over this guy, okay? He couldn't finish him, of course, because he does not know how to finish people on the ground. But if you give Khamzat 1 minute, forget 6 minutes, 1 minute of ground control over Pereira, I think it would be a tap-tap situation. So, look, tough task for Khamzat. I think because of his build, because of his mentality, because of the way he goes about his fights, the pace that he pushes, I think he's able to beat pretty much anybody, pretty much. Of course, there's challenging opponents. Of course, it's MMA and anything could happen. But because of these factors, I think he is the person in position that has the highest probability of achieving triple champ status. I'm not saying he'll do it, but I think he has the highest probability and possibility of any fighter currently on the roster of achieving this. So, it's a maybe. It's a maybe. I think double champ is inevitable. I think that will happen, but triple champ is a good maybe. And I'm definitely rooting for him to do it. I want him to be the first one. He's my favorite fighter. So let's go, Khamzat. I think you could do it. So excellent question. Big debate. Let's move on to the next one. Gabriel_Alves.B asks, favorite Brazilian. I'm assuming favorite Brazilian fighter. It's Gilbert Durinho Burns. I love Brazilian fighters. I love watching Pereira. I love watching Oliveira. Great guys. Jose Aldo, retired now. Loved watching him. But my favorite UFC fighter that comes out of Brazil is none other than Gilbert Durinho Burns. I was always a fan of his. I love watching him fight. I think he's really well-rounded. He can knock you out. He can submit you. His jiu-jitsu is out of this world. I gained a lot of respect for him when he stepped up and said, I'll fight Khamzat at a time where nobody wanted to fight Khamzat. So that made me respect him even more, and I became an even bigger fan than what I already was. So I got to go with Durinho on this. I hope he has a comeback. I know he had that unfortunate situation with Bilal Muhammad where he shot that takedown, injured his shoulder, and pretty much fought 4.5 rounds in a way where he can't even throw his entire left hand. So he was at a huge disadvantage there. I think a healthy Gilbert would pose a lot of problems to Bilal and possibly even beat him. You know, it'd be a very competitive fight. But I hope he bounces back, and I'm looking forward to his return. I think he'll be ready to fight as of January, February, from what I remember. So Gilbert Durinho, baby, let's go. Excellent question. Next one. Sorry if I say this incorrectly. Harkanian MMA asks, what made you interested in Khamzat Chimaev? That's a great question. A lot of people ask me that one because, as everybody knows right now, he is my favorite fighter of all time. And there's a lot of factors that play into why he's my favorite fighter and why I love watching him fight and I love his story. So I'll give you guys a quick breakdown why he's my favorite. So there's multiple reasons. So when Khamzat came into the UFC, I started watching him from his first fight. Now, for me, it was just another guy, another prospect. You know, he came in, he did his thing, very exciting. I got to give it to him. As a prospect, I was like, wow, like this guy is looking great, you know. I liked watching him fight, but I wasn't like, oh my God, I'm super excited for his next fight. I was just like, okay, whenever he's back on, we'll catch him again and see him, because off the bat, he was dominating. So he looked very interesting to me. And I love seeing prospects come in and dominate. It gets me excited because I'm like, wow, maybe this guy could be a threat in this division. And it spices things up if he's actually as good as as good as he's advertised, or as good as he shows in the octagon. So he came in, had a couple good fights, very nice, amazing. Then one day comes where he's fighting Li Jingliang, sorry, and I tuned into that fight, and you know, he just came in and picked up the guy. I think he was ranked number 11 at the time, Lee. I think he was number 11, and Khamzat was unranked. He came in and picked up an unranked fighter. He walked him across the octagon to Dana White and started yelling some dumb shit, yelling like, bring me Brock Lesnar, bring me this guy, I smash everybody. And then he slammed him on the ground, okay, and continued talking to Dana. He was just holding him on the ground. He continued talking to Dana, and then he proceeded to finding the finish in the first round. That moment, I became a fan. I'm like, I have never seen something so dominant in the history of the UFC. I was like, what am I looking at here? He picked up another fighter, took a coffee break, took a little smoke break, or whatever you want to call it, a little chit chat break, a little coffee room break, and the rest was history. I became a super fan, and I'm like, who the fuck is this guy, Khamzat Chimaev? What did he just do? What did he just do to a ranked opponent? Like, I got so excited to watch him fight again and again after that. I just became a super fan. After that fight, I wanted to know all about him. I wanted to know his past, his history, where he fought, how he grew up. And then I started looking into it, and then I realized like this guy came from tough beginnings, growing up in war in Chechnya. When he was a kid, Chechnya was at war. He grew up in a war land, very, very poor, didn't have much. His mom struggled. He had siblings. His mom struggled. She would work a lot to feed her kids. You know, I saw this documentary on YouTube. I don't remember the name of it, but it was about Khamzat's upbringing. It was like a maybe 1 hour long video, and they spoke about how his mom would not eat on certain occasions because there just wouldn't be enough food. And Khamzat and his siblings did not understand that concept because, of course, they were kids. And now that they're older, now that he's older, he realized like my mom wasn't eating because she wanted to give her kids food to grow up and survive and be healthy. And she took the sacrifice, she took the risk because they didn't have enough food or money. And honestly, watching that documentary, learning about his story, I felt so connected to him. I felt very bad for his upbringing and just wanted to root for this guy. I wanted to see him succeed. These stories are emotional. They get me emotional. And, you know, imagine being a kid growing up in war. It must be the most brutal thing humanly possible to go through. So, you know, just learning about his story made me even more of a fan than what I had already become after watching him dominate Lee. And, you know, not only that, he's super humble and respectful, right? Like, look at how he treats his coaches. All about humility. He promotes them. He thanks them all the time. When he fought Burns, okay, he basically took his coach's game plan and tossed it in the garbage. He's like, I'm going to go and brawl. I said, I'm going to knock out this guy. I'm going to go brawl and try to knock him out. And he made a very bad mistake. He got caught in a big brawl against a guy you do not want to brawl with, okay? He took the coach's game plan, threw it out the window, and said, I'm going to go do my own thing here. And at the end of the fight, he knew he fucked up. He apologized to his coaches so many times. I saw a video of him in the locker room, saying that, like, pretty much saying he got humbled, and that he'll never let down his coaches ever again. He's like, he got too excited. He wanted to knock out Gilbert Burns. He felt like he may have disrespected his coaches, and that will never happen again. So even winning at that time the biggest victory of his career, beating Gilbert Burns is no joke. You just sat there and beat Gilbert Burns, and the fact that you're going to apologize to your coaches even after getting the biggest victory of your career proves his humility, which is something that I like to look up to. I love humble people, humble human beings. So his humility, his background growing up, and just the way he dominates fights, and he comes in to entertain, and he's also so good at what he does. I enjoy watching him grapple and dominate. So all these factors combined make Khamzat my favorite fighter ever. I've been watching UFC for a long time, and I've never been a super fan of anybody. I've been a fan of fighters, so I like this guy. I love watching him. I want him to win, But Khamzat is like, it goes even deeper. Like, I want him to fucking become triple champion and smash everybody in his path, So I never really had been a super fan for a fighter like that. So it's the first time, and I love him. I'm tuning into all his fights. I'm supporting him, make content about him. And great question. I get that question a lot, actually. Next one, we have 3 more questions. So Adesanya _season asks, who should Izzy fight next? That's a great question. And it's a tough question to answer because from what I understood, Izzy does not want to fight anytime soon. So he wants to take a break. He lost his belt in dominant fashion to Sean Strickland, and he says, okay, I'm going to take a break right now. I need to step back, enjoy life a little bit, rethink, and I'll be back stronger, which I respect. I think he's doing a very good decision, and he deserves to take a break. He was one of the most active fighters for quite some time now. I don't even know, he was fighting multiple times a year for many years, so you got to give the guy his respect. So this question, it really depends when he decides to come back. If he wants to take a 2-3 year layoff, like a guy like John Jones or GSP, I think took 4 years off before he came back, if I'm not mistaken, to fight for the middleweight belt, in which he won. So in 2, 3, 4 years, a lot of things can change in the UFC. A lot of contenders change, new champions come about, new champions come in and out, new top contenders arise. So if we're talking a few years down the line, I really don't know what the landscape of the middleweight division will look like. But if we're talking today, it's tough. It's tough to select a fighter. If he's going to come back ASAP, maybe fight Khamzat, because Khamzat's not fighting for the title, even though it was promised. They gave it to Dricus du Plessis. He's going to be fighting Sean Strickland next. So if Izzy wants to come back now, maybe Khamzat. Khamzat seems to be like the gatekeeper now. I think Khamzat, if he gets one more victory, they will have to award him the title shot, because they had already promised that the winner of Khamzat and Usman will get it, and that did not go through for whatever reason. So I'm sure he has to be next in line. So if he's next in line, maybe you got to give Izzy that fight, Khamzat versus Izzy, because then that gives Izzy a chance to be next in line if he could beat Khamzat. So out of respect for Izzy to climb back to the top, maybe fight Khamzat Chimaev. I don't know. Or fight the loser of Strickland du Plessis. I mean, both fights are interesting, right? Strickland would be his revenge fight, come back and beat the guy that beat him and took his belt. And du Plessis, we already know they have that beef about Africa between them. They had that face-off and that weird beef they have going on. So both stories play out well. look, if he wants to come back now, I say Khamzat Chimaev. If he's gonna wait, maybe a year, maybe come back and fight a guy like Sean or Duplessis. I don't know. What do you guys think? It really depends when he comes back, because the landscape could be completely different in a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, depending when he wants to return. And he did say something about returning in 2027, which I think was a joke. But if he's being serious, the UFC is going to look a lot different in 2027. I'll tell you that. So great question. We're down to the last two. Indrajit3431 asks, did you meet any UFC fighters? I have met UFC fighters. The first fighter I ever met was Arman Tsarukyan. I met him at a Whole Foods in South Florida. He was fighting... Who was he fighting? I forgot who he was fighting. I forgot the opponent. But he was fighting on Saturday in Vegas, and I bumped into him at a Whole Foods on Monday in South Florida. And I'm like, yo, I just literally watched you fight on Saturday. What an amazing performance. He ended up winning. He got the finish. It was a great fight. He was super nice. He had gratitude. He thanked me. He was a very nice guy. So it was cool bumping into him at the supermarket. Really random, but I'll take it. I like Tsarukyan. He's a good prospect on the rise. Who else did I meet? I met Gilbert Burns in Vegas. Super nice guy. He even recognized me from my videos. In the beginning, he didn't. In the beginning, he was, I came up, I shook his hand, and he didn't know who I was. And I'm like, by the way, I'm the guy that makes the videos. And he's like, videos? And I'm like, yeah, Alpha Warfare. And then I point at my shirt. I was wearing my Alpha Warfare shirt, and he goes, oh, you're the guy, oh, this and that. And then whatever, like we hugged it out quick, took a picture. It was very cool. Like he recognized me because I do make content about him, and he engages with it. Anything I drop about Gilbert Burns, he likes, he comments. We've had a couple conversations on DMs as well. So, super nice guy, humble. He's posted my videos on his Instagram too, which is freaking awesome. Like I made it on his account, and we've collabed as well, which is cool. We have a collab on Instagram. You'll see it in my highlights under the collabs highlight. So Gilbert, very nice man. It was a pleasure to meet him. I'm sure I'll meet him again. Who else did I meet? I bumped into Charles Oliveira at the Caesars Palace in Vegas. He was coming out of, I want to say, the Apple store. Is there an Apple store at the Caesars? I don't remember, but he had an Apple bag. I think he came out of the Apple store. Bumped into him randomly in International Fight Week. I went up to him, shook his hand. He doesn't speak much English. I told him I'm a fan, and if we could snap a quick picture. And I take my phone and I go for the selfie, right? I go for to take a selfie, and he goes, no, and he takes my phone and he gives it to his friend or whoever he was with at the time to take an actual full body photo, which was very cool of him. I didn't want to bother anybody. I just wanted to be in and out. I don't like really bothering people that much. People are busy. They're celebrities. They get approached all the time. I just want to be in and out, discreet, and that's it. But it was nice of him to take my phone and give it to his buddy and take a full body picture. So thank you, Charles, for that. That was really cool of you. Who else did I meet? So we said Tsarukyan, Gilbert. Oh, I met Michael Chandler at International Fight Week as well. Super nice guy, super humble, very grateful. And for those who don't know, Michael Chandler is, for me, top 3 most exciting fighters to watch. So I love tuning into his fights. I find Khamzat's exciting. I find Justin Gaethje's exciting. And I also find Michael Chandler is also my top 3 most exciting fighters. So, when you watch Michael Chandler, you could always expect a bloodbath. You can expect haymakers being thrown, like savage attacks. Just leave it all in there. So he's super fun to watch. One of my favorite fighters. And I met him at International Fight Week. Took a picture with him. Had a quick word. And he was super nice. Very, very nice. Did I meet anybody else? Oh, I met Grant Dawson yesterday. I met Grant Dawson here in South Florida. He was walking his dogs. Very nice man. We spoke for a few minutes. We talked about his last fight with Bobby Green. It was unfortunate, but mistakes happen. Little slip-ups happen. I think he will bounce back. What he did to Damir Ismagulov, he dominated him. And I truly believe Damir Ismagulov is a better fighter than Bobby Green. So, I think you'll have a good bounce back. I think it was just one of those situations, but super nice guy. We talked a little bit, spoke about some future fights, Sean O'Malley, Cheeto Vera. He asked me some questions. It was really nice to meet him. Grant Dawson, maybe I'll bump into you again. I know you're around here, so very cool guy. And who else? I met Drew Dober very briefly outside of Carbones at the Aria in Vegas. And funny enough, speaking of Carbones in Vegas, I met Drew Dober outside of that restaurant, and maybe 5 minutes later, because I was still outside, I was on the phone, and 5 minutes later, who do I see coming out? Dana White. I met Dana White outside of Carbones as well at Aria. Took a picture with both of them. Super nice guys. Drew Dober is all about the fans. He was super thankful for the kind words I gave him. He took multiple pictures with me. He sat. He was patient. He spoke with me. Super nice guy. You can tell that he loves his fans. And Dana White as well. Dana White was overly grateful to meet a fan. I just went up to him like, yo, Dana, pleasure to meet you, man. I watch all the pay-per-views. I buy them. I'm a huge fan. Thank you so much for this business you've built. Thank you for the entertainment. And the amount of thank yous I got, I must have gotten like 9 thank yous from Dana White. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It means the world. Thank you. Like 10 thank yous I must have gotten from Dana White in a span of a minute. Like the guy is top. Super grateful. Super appreciative. We took a quick picture and that was the end of that. It was a pleasure meeting the GOAT Dana White. So as far as meeting people, I think that's about it. Yeah, I think that's it. Anyways, move on. Next question. Great question. Why do fighters from Dagestan dominate MMA? And this is the last question, actually. Why do fighters from Dagestan dominate MMA? I think it's just their upbringing. They come from these villages in Russia where they don't live a life similar to the Western life that we live here. They have harder lives. They grow up working from a younger age. They grow up wrestling wrestling I think is mandatory, right? Or not mandatory, but it's part of the culture. I think if you're not wrestling by 5, 6, 7 years old, when you start hitting 8, 9, 10, you start getting picked on and bullied. So it's in everyone's best interest to start wrestling from like 5, 6 years old. So just that gives them an edge, a physical edge, a mental edge, extra experience. It seems like respect is something that is highly valuable to them, and it might be partly because of their religion. It's all about respect, humility, showing respect to your elders, to your parents, gratitude, doing the right thing. So combine humility with starting wrestling from a young age. Now you're building your physical, your mental, your spiritual, your emotional. You become this savage by the time you're a young adult, and then you make it to the UFC and you're just mentally and physically levels above everybody else. So I think that's why they dominate in MMA. Like all they need is a takedown. The majority of them are just great grapplers and wrestlers. They have that insane top pressure that they've been working on from kids. It's hard to beat that. You could be training MMA for a long time, but if you've been training since 5 and you're learning that top pressure, you're learning techniques from a young age, kind of hard to beat that. That's why I think they're so dominant, and I don't think it's going to stop here. I think more are going to come out. They're spawning. There's guys like he's not from Dagestan, but he's from Chechnya, and I think he fights out of Turkey. Khamzat Makhachev, who is like a clone to Khamzat Chimaev. Same thing, beard, no mustache. Last name ends with the letter V. These guys train like animals from a young age. He looks like he may be coming up on the rise and maybe enter the UFC at some point. So there's a lot of them coming up, spawning out of nowhere. We always get new ones every year, and they're building their name, and they're representing their countries, and it's interesting to see. I want to see how people are going to beat these guys like Islam, Habib, Khamzat. Their mentalities are another level. They start young, they start fresh. They have nothing but respect That's how they live by. These are their values, and it is what it is. They're dominating right now. Guys, this will wrap up the podcast. Thank you so much for your questions. I will be doing this more often. I love getting questions from you guys. I could talk about anything I want, but I think ultimately talking about what my followers want me to talk about is a plus. It gives me content ideas, and it allows me to interact with you guys and answer your questions. So I know I'm going to be doing this a lot more often. I'll be dropping them in my Instagram stories. So if you're not following on Instagram, maybe you should follow if you want your question to be answered. I'll do it every now and then. And thank you guys for the wonderful questions. And thank you for all the love and support. I will talk to you guys soon. Peace. Have a great day.